Welcome to Heal the New Sexy. My name is Samantha. I am a licensed clinical social worker. Today I want to talk about how to become a man's kryptonite. Now I know there's a whole lot of dating advice out there. There's a whole lot of relationship advice out there, but I'm just going to add my 2 cents, okay? I'm just going to put a little dash on it. So what I'm going to teach you today is something that I've taught women that I've worked with in therapy and coaching. Last month I went and got a pedicure. I even taught the girl that was doing my pedicure this, okay? I want to teach it through a story. So one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story of Abigail. If you don't know about Abigail, Abigail was married to a man that the Bible describes as a fool, right? The Bible describes him as a fool. And in the story, what happens is that David, this is the time where David was hiding out from Saul. David and his men are camped outside of their camp. And so David sends a message to her husband. His name is like Lemuel. I can't pronounce his name. It's one of them names. You know, the Bible, they be having some names. But David sends a message and says, we haven't harmed your servants. We haven't harmed your cattle, your wild stock. Give us some food. Give us something to eat. And her husband, being a fool, right? He was not a good man, Savannah, was like, no, I'm not going to do that. David heard, and he was like, bet, let's ride out, okay? Ludacris started playing, roll out. They was like, I'm about to kill him and everything. I'm about to burn this place down, okay? The servant goes to Abigail and tells Abigail what happens. Abigail gets all of the food and her servants, meets David out in the middle of, I'm guessing, in the middle of the field between her camp and where David was. And it says that she said, David, forgive me. For if I would have known, I would have given you what you wanted. She says, my interpretation, she says, we've heard of you. We know that you are to be the future king. We've heard of your exploits and your victory. She says, don't let this be a blemish on your mind and on your reputation when you become king. David said, thank you for reminding me about who I am. He took the food. They went on their way. The Bible says that when her husband found out, and I got to tell you the whole story now because it's good. When her husband found out he died, then when David found out that her husband died, he sent a servant and asked Abigail if she would marry him. Okay. Then let me tell you this part. Then I'm gonna go back to what I'm teaching you about. Then, you know, when the Bible says that David sought the Lord and he said, should I pursue or not? And the Lord said, pursue, you shall recover all. And he went to Ziklag and burned the place down and got all his stuff. You know, Abigail, not Bathsheba, not Michael. Abigail was one of the wives that David went and got. Yes. But the reason why I love that story is because Abigail spoke to the king in David. It's not how he was presenting that she addressed. She spoke to the king in him, right? Whatever you want from a person, you have to speak to. I remember my grandmother, it was a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago. I remember my grandmother wanting to get her hair done. Now, let me be very clear with you. My grandmother has served in the military as an officer. She is a combat veteran and she's a pharmacist, okay? So she is that girl, okay? But I remember this particular day I was over at my grandparents' house and I remember her wanting to get her hair done. She had braids and I don't know how she wanted to change her hairstyle, but she wanted to get her hair done, okay? And I remember now, mind you, she's all of this, combat, officer in the military, and a pharmacist, right? She's highly educated, okay? So got her own money too. Let me put that, she has her own money and she was working. I remember my grandmother sitting in my grandfather's lap. And I remember my grandfather turning his head and I just remember her talking to him. And I remember going in and I'm like, what y'all doing? And he like, she want to get her hair done. You know she got her hair done, right? Because in that moment, her body language, what she was doing and how she was speaking to him, she was speaking to the king in him. And how could he deny her? He couldn't. He couldn't. Something I want you to realize with our men is that our men, especially if they grow up with healthy women in their lives, they don't do well with female aggression or aggression from women. If you notice how a woman begins to respond, whether it's very emotional or perceived to be aggressive, they almost short circuit because they don't get that. Because the women in their lives have always been nurturing and doting. Now I know, I hear you. Cynthia, he grown. I hear you loud and clear. But in our healing, we also have to make a decision on how we're going to talk to and interact with the men in our life. It says you get more, what does it say? You get more, what is this saying? You get more bees with honey than vinegar? Bzz, bzz. Okay, what you gonna do? So I know for some of you, because of the things that you've experienced, you're like, girl, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna talk to him like that. And that's cool. It's up to you. But I want to let you know that if you want to see a man move, you got to speak to the king in him, or you got to speak to the little boy in him. If you are a boy mom, you know this. You know this. When our boys are little, they want to impress us. There's nothing that they won't do for us. They will go out there, pick the dandelion, and they bring it to us, and we make a big deal about it. Oh my gosh, look at this flower. This is the best flower. This is the prettiest flower that I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And their little boy's chest, they swell with pride. I remember my son would be 2 or 3 years old. Be like, let me see your muscles. He would go, baby, he ain't got no muscles. No muscles. But you see them swell with pride. If you speak to your man the same way, there is nothing that you won't be able to get. Listen, I've taught this to some of the wives that I work with, and they're like, Smithy, ain't this manipulation? I said, no, you're speaking to him in a language that he understands and that he responds to. There is no man that will resist a woman that speaks to him kindly, that speaks to him sweetly, that speaks to him with respect. He will not be able to deny you. Okay? All right. Now, if you enjoyed this video, be so kind to share it. Also, I would love for you to subscribe, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.